Welcome back, YouTube. In preparation for upgrading the clutch and pressure plate to a dual material clutch that is rated for 550 horsepower. So if we ever do decide to supercharge this or put a turbo on it, we will be prepared. Getting ready to pull the old clutch and pressure plate off. Which really isn't all that old, but it's just a stock model, so it's not rated for that much horsepower. And then I'm going to get that flywheel off. I want to take that down and have it turned, just as preparation. And then I want to change the pilot bearing. So right now, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the pressure plate off. Of course, the clutch disc will fall out with it. It's just a set number of bolts around the outside. The hardest part about this, one, is keeping all the wiring out of the way, because that wants to always get in your face. Two, it does have a little bit of weight to it, so once you get that last bolt off, just make sure you don't smack yourself in the head. So here we go. And there we go. One each clutch. Doesn't look too terrible. Doesn't look too great either. All the springs are attached, so that's a good thing. And pressure plate looks fine. Like I said, it was a stock model, whatever stock horsepower is. 200, 300 horsepower maybe. I want to be prepared for more. That disc actually doesn't look like it was making good mating. All right, next thing I'm going to do is pull the flywheel off. Same thing as with the pressure plate. Once you get the last bolt out, make sure that you catch it, because it's not exactly the lightest in the world. Just these 6 bolts here. Then after that, we'll probably do the pilot bearing or pilot bushing and get that out. So let's go ahead and take this flywheel off. $17mm. All right, let's talk through the flywheel just a bit. This is the mating surface that your clutch disc rides on. So the reason that you take the flywheel off and take it to a machine shop and have it ground is to make sure that this is extremely flat, so you have a good mating surface between the clutch plate and the rotation of the crankshaft, because this bolts directly to the crank. When you take yours off and you take a good hard look at it, make sure that you don't see any cracking or crazing anywhere along the surface. And I'll clean this up with some degreaser here in a minute just to make sure that I don't see any. Make sure that you don't have any cracking, that travels from bolt hole to bolt hole, because those would be the weak points on it. Make sure you don't have any cracking, for your pressure plate mount bolts. As long as you don't see any cracking, as long as you don't see any crazing or anything that looks like it's been overheated terribly and damaged, you're probably okay going back with the stock flywheel. The stock flywheel is an all steel flywheel. It is not really good for quickly getting RPMs in your car. An aluminum flywheel will allow your engine to spool up slightly faster, but faster it will spool. But the heavier steel flywheel makes the car much more drivable. So if you're, pulling forward in a parking lot, you're doing low speeds, this mass spun around doesn't want to slow down as quickly as an aluminum flywheel would, which means that it's a whole heck of a lot easier to drive, especially for a daily driver, to have a steel flywheel. If you are racing, if you're road racing and you need to come out of a corner and get your engine to spool up quicker, an aluminum flywheel might be the way to go. And then they do make a hybrid steel center with a aluminum face. I think I got that correct. Anyhow, it's a hybrid hub made of one material and mating surface made of another. It's about half the weight. It may be a good compromise, but as long as your flywheel doesn't have any cracks or crazing or overheated, or the teeth for the starter are in good shape, you are just fine taking this down, paying the 30, 40, 50 bucks. It's been forever since I had one turn, so I don't know what it costs, but it's not expensive. It's much like turning a rotor. So that's what we're getting ready to do with this. All right, taking a look at the clutch that came out. Hasn't been in too terribly long. Not really happy with the mating of the clutch. Definitely have high and low spots, but overall it doesn't look like there's anything terribly wrong with it. All 4 springs look to be intact. I don't see any cracking. I don't see any heat signatures of something overheating. Either side, both look pretty good. Maybe that's just normal wear. Anyhow, so that looks good. On the pressure plate side, again, doesn't look like Josh got it too awfully hot, which is always a good thing. I don't see any cracking. Bolt holes look good. I had plenty of tension still left on it. This has probably only been in the car 20,000 miles, so maybe even less than that. Now, what we are going back with is a set of Ram clutches, clutch pressure plate, throwout bearing. This is, again, dual material. One side is metallic and one side is, the organic clutch material that we get on a stock clutch. So let's take a look at what we have here. So right out of the bat, looks significantly different. Spring setup is different. By the way, I have upgraded from a 10 spline input shaft on this TR3650 to a cryo hardened 26 spline input shaft, which was what came in the 3650 that came on the Cobras. Because I do plan on putting a lot more horsepower through it, I did plan on upgrading my clutch. So one surface looks very similar to the stock clutch, a little bit different on the clutch. And I'm not sure we can see much difference on the pressure plate, other than it does need to be cleaned up. Get that cosmoline or that protectant that's on it off. It is reddish burgundy purple, so I guess that's a good thing. Even come with new dowels, so I can put my new dowels. I guess that's to replace in the flywheel. That's a good thing. Clutch alignment tool. New release bearing. So we are going to have fun. But then we'll be able to handle a whole heck of a lot more horsepower.
Alright, as you can see, I am under the vehicle now, under the Mustang, and hello everybody. Today we are going to move forward with continuing to take and replace the rear main seal along with the pilot bearing. It's pretty straightforward steps here. First being, there's going to be 8 bolts surrounding this, so 2 here, 2 up top, 2 here, and actually you're going to need to take the 2 bolts sitting on the bottom near the oil pan. These also need to come out. And once you do that, you can actually see they're aligned here. We're going to have to just pull it straight back. It is RTV'd right here. As you can see, there's a glob, and that is all around it. So we're going to have to pry bar it off, which is fine. It shouldn't take much. And then once this is off, once we pry this off, we're actually going to clean up the rest of that RTV and start the reassembly process so we can get this bearing and this seal changed out. So we're going to start with that and let's get it going. Be warned, these bolts have a little bit of oil in them. So I'm gonna go get something so nothing drips. Alright, so as simple as that. All those bolts came out, super easy. Now we're gonna move to getting this off with some pry bars and some brute strength. So stay tuned for some interesting prying of this panel. Woo! Just like that, you work it from each side and it comes off pretty easily. Not too shabby. Obviously, this is what we're going to be changing. This little rubber piece is not great lighting under the car, but Yeah, that's all it is. That's what causes a lot of issues in high mileage cars. This starts leaking. You saw how easy it was to get to and change when the transmission's out. But you have to get to this point for it to be easy to change. Yeah, we weren't having problems yet. We already had it out. So we were gonna do it. This next step going forward here is you saw me fighting it. All these surfaces, all these mating surfaces here from the back of that plate there has all this residue and RTV buildup that we don't really want there, because when we re-put it on there, we want a good mating surface. So we're gonna scrape off just with a scraper and a razor blade. PSA, and we maybe should have said this before we removed the plate. Once you remove that plate, your internals to your engine are right here. Do not, or try to avoid at any cost, getting anything into your engine. If you do, or you think you do, I would recommend changing your oil. But this is fresh oil we have in here, so we don't want to have to change it again. So just be very careful. Put a rag here. Don't push it too far in or anything. But just stop some of that stuff from getting into your engine while you're scraping some of this residue off. Alright, so last thing, I'm just gonna run over it with some brake clean. That surface nice and clean for our for putting the plate back on.
Not hit your wires and get back out again.
They're coming for vengeance. Alright, so last thing to do while we're under here is we're going to check the mating surface around the crank for any scarring, grooves, damage. We want to make sure that seal has a good ride and a smooth rotation around this. So we're going to hit it just with another thing of brake clean around here, and then I'm just going to take, what I can visibly see, I don't see anything, and then I'm just going to kind of rely on my finger for the rest of it to see if I notice anything big around that. But I think we should be good.
All right, and keeping up with what Josh was talking about earlier, making sure that your mating surfaces are good, we're going to do the same thing on the cover. We're going to go ahead and make sure that this is clean, get rid of any debris here. But the old rear main seal is still in the housing. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a brass punch and we're just going to go ahead and punch it out from the inside out, which will be the same direction that we put it back in. So let me get a little bit of this oil cleaned up. We'll go ahead and knock that seal out. Should be able to put there. One each oil slinger, right? That's your retainer on the backside. It's called an oil slinger or retainer or whatever you want to call it. So, all right. Use brass. Don't screw things up. So, old seal came right out. Good. No damage on the inside here. All right. We got a new seal from Felpro. Felpro has two different seals that you can purchase. The seal itself is the same, but you can get a kit that has this plastic ring, which makes it a whole lot easier when we're going to put the seal over the end of the crankshaft. Just gives us a good surface in which to slide it over and expand the seal. Ford does sell a special tool just for this, so if you have stupid money to spend and you just want to buy a tool that you're going to use once in a blue moon, if you're just an individual working on your own car, then go for it. If not, spend the extra $8 or so and buy the seal that has the plastic retainer. So we're going to put the seal into the retainer first, then we will go under the car and mount it. There are some videos out there where everybody has put the cover back onto the engine block and then put the seal in. I don't know if there is one way that is better than another, but we're going to do this the way that the book calls for. Put this in here, make sure you support it really well. Put a block of wood so we don't damage anything. All right, that was nice and simple. We got to go a little bit further. You go just far enough to where your oil slinger will sit nicely in there. Good to go. Easy way to do that. is use the old seal. See how much further that went. Oil slinger will fit. Once your oil slinger is level, you have a good mating surface here, you know you are good to go. I like it, son.
And voila. And that was just quick black RTV around every possible surface that this makes a connection to the back of that engine. So now that it's prepped, ready, surface is cleaned, seal's in, we're happy with how the seal's sitting right now. We can move forward with putting it back into the car with the black RTV, and we can move forward with changing that bearing out.